Hello everyone, welcome to Live from Abuja, reaching you from Nigeria's capital city.
On the show, we will take you through major events in politics, entertainment and sport that shape the week in Nigeria and across the world. I am Ademola Lawrence.
Sit back, relax and enjoy the show. I am Jane Francis Nweze.
Interesting.
In Nigeria, preparations are in top gear ahead of the very low first key anniversary of President Bola Tinubu in office.
Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu says the celebration would emphasize on sectoral briefings through the presentations of performance reports to Nigerians by the 47 ministers in his cabinet.
Last year, President Bola Tinubu was sworn in as the 16th president of Nigeria. Hopes and aspirations were high, and an enormous tax was placed on the shoulder of the administration to deliver the dividends of democracy to the people. In less than 10 days, it will be 1 year since President Tinubu assumed office and sworn on oath to save Nigerians. This briefing marks the beginning of activities to commemorate the anniversary. The committee reveals that all other activities to commemorate the anniversary will be low-key, with focus on sectorial briefings.
The anniversary, the 1 year anniversary body is going to be one that is low-key, and that is why emphasis is going to be based only on sectoral briefings. There will be no ceremonies surrounding the 1 year in office of the president. We want to have sectoral briefings by the various ministers, and this is consistent with the policy of President Bola Tinubu to improve efficiency and ensure that government expenditure is also kept for the good of the people. Now,
Secretary to the Government of the Federation and the chairman of the committee gave a hint on some of the giant steps taken by the administration, ranging from education, health and the economy.
Ensuring the safety and security of Nigerians remains a top priority of government. Thus, therefore, strengthen our security apparatus, enhance intelligence gathering, increase funding and foster greater collaboration among security agencies to address the multifaceted challenges of security across the country.
Answer to all this is to restore microeconomic stability that will ensure that investors, both domestic and international, put their face in our economy once again. And we are all doing this without blaming. One of the things that President was very clear about is not blaming anybody.
The ministerial briefing series will commence on 23rd through 24th May 2024.
The International Day for Biological Diversity is an opportunity to raise awareness about the critical threats facing biodiversity. It was sanctioned by the United Nations to raise awareness. Biodiversity is essential for human life and for the planet altogether, as it provides us with food, shelter, and other essential resources.
But the International Union of Conservation of Nature says about 44,000 species of plants, animals, and other species fall into the threatened categories. Out of these, about 309 in Nigeria are threatened, despite the advantages these species have to human survival.
The 22nd of May is set aside to commemorate the International Biological Diversity Day. This day is to raise awareness on the importance of conserving our ecosystem. According to conservationists, trees, wild plants, mosquitoes, lizards, frogs, etc. are all important elements in our ecosystem that helps us function adequately as humans.
Without biodiversity, we would not survive, and that is why it is an important global day. Biodiversity provides the food we eat, it provides the clean water we drink, it provides the pollination for crops.
Records show Nigeria has lost over 1 million hectares of land, thereby losing the natural habitat of our biodiversity. This and other factors pose a major threat to Nigeria's biodiversity, including pollution caused by agro and industrial chemicals with harsh effects on plants, birds, and our water body. Other threats are poaching and hunting.
So we are actually consuming, what should help defend us against, climate change. Someone will ask, how will a little animal help? That is why it is called an ecosystem. We are also part of the ecosystem. So when you destroy the food chain, when you destroy the chain, then it impacts on the entire ecosystem.
He says there are dire consequences to altering our biodiversity.
But you need those microorganisms in the soil, right, for soil fertility. So you destroy everything. So directly, it impacts on our food security. It also impacts on our health. Because before now, we rely so much on herbs. Where do they come from? Biodiversity. Even now, many of the pharmaceutical companies rely on some of these herbs, plants, to produce, some of the drugs that we take.
To mitigate these challenges that destroys our biodiversity, Dr. Michael says it requires collective effort of both government and individuals.
Yes, you're taking it.
Joining us on the show to discuss more on the International Day for Biodiversity is Dr. Michael Teungwa, who is the founder and executive director of the Global Initiative for Food Security and Ecosystem Preservation. Good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right. So, let us, begin with the maybe very not so simple question, but what is biodiversity all about?
That biodiversity is simply life, different type of life. So what are we looking at? What are we referring to? We are looking at genetic biodiversity. We're looking at species biodiversity and also ecological biodiversity. And let me just say that today is Africa Day, a very special day for the continent. Not just because it's Africa Day, but also because Africa is so rich in biodiversity. And Nigeria, being one of the richest countries in the world, rich in biodiversity. Unfortunately, we are not valuing the biodiversity that we have.
Well, now, looking at this year's theme, say be part of the plan.
Yes.
How do you think that this theme actually reflects the protection of this species, most especially when it has to do with Nigeria and Africa as a whole?
So, if biodiversity is disrupted, it impacts everyone, and I mean everyone on the planet. So, if biodiversity is disrupted within the ecosystem, it impacts you and I. And that's why we say be part of the plan. Everyone in Nigeria has to be part of the plan. And what is the plan? To conserve and protect biodiversity. For us to know that biodiversity is a resource that we are losing, check around your homes. Growing up, you will see butterflies, you will see insects around. Yeah. How many do you still see around? The numbers are dwindling. So it means that we are doing things that are impacting on this life. And this life has much to do with our health, to do with our food, to do with our entire well-being as people. So we must protect biodiversity.
All right, so now you talk about protecting biodiversity and all that, and then we know that, you know, when the UN comes up with some of these things, so there's always a text, like the May, I think 1922, you know, adoption text for biological diversity. Tell us more about it. Maybe it can help us to start getting better understanding of how to be part of the plan.
So the world realized that we as humans, we are not alone in this planet. There are other forms of lives that are equally very important. And that is why the ICUN was formed. That is the International Conservation of Nature Committee. So this body looks at all the lives that we have, you know, around the world. Look at all the hotspots. In Nigeria, at present, the hotspot for biodiversity is Cross River State. But because of the geography, you know, we have the tropical rainforest down there, and then we have the savanna up here, and then we also have the Sahel. All of these regions and this geography have different lives, right? And that's what makes Nigeria very rich in biodiversity. And so, having understood that we cannot function alone, take example, the bees, the honeybees, right? Everybody likes honey. But the bees don't just produce honey. They are a major pollinator for our crops. Without the bees, our food crops will dwindle. And that is exactly what we're facing right now. We are losing the pollinators, not just in Nigeria, but globally. And that's why the United Nations came up with different bodies like the UNEP. And right now, there is a body that is designated for biodiversity. We actually have a biodiversity COP. The biodiversity COP this year is taking place in Colombia sometime in September. That gives you the importance of biodiversity. Because if you disrupt one cycle, then it impacts on us. And in this time of climate change, biodiversity remains our only natural defense against climate change. And that's why we must protect it.
You know, when you were speaking the other time, you talked about flies and I'm very
butterflies.
Sure I'm very sure if flies come near you now, what would you do? Because I'm trying to see how that, you know, plays into how we're able to protect the biodiversity.
Yes.
And of course, that's one. Then the second one I want to ask is, do you think that government is doing enough, you know, to preserve or support enough to preserve this biodiversity, and even communities and individuals? Do you think we're actually doing that?
So let me start with the first one.
Okay.
Now,
that's very key.
When we have the little insects around, the question is, what is their importance? We say, what is the economic importance of mosquitoes, for example? Yes, they cause malaria.
Yeah.
But they are an important part of the ecosystem, important part of the food chain. So they are food to other animals that we consume. They are food within the ecosystem. So when you have mosquito larvae within the system, the fish, the tilapia fish, and all these others, they feed on these larvae, right? When you have the frogs around and you feel, no, we shouldn't have frogs, we kill everything, then the snakes, what would they eat? Are you getting me now? That's why it is so interconnected. It's a food chain. Every living thing on the planet has its use and has its importance. So when we disrupt the system, most often, we have others producing more. For example, one of the endangered species called the pangolin is an animal that feeds on insects. It can eat millions of insects. So when you don't have pangolins, what happens? you have lots of insects attacking you, right? So that's why we must protect. And then going back to the government, yes, urbanization, population increase have all impacted on the habitat of biodiversity, on the habitat of wildlife. And when we say biodiversity, most often we look at wildlife. We're also looking at plants as well, right? So we must protect them. Right now, there is a bill at the National Assembly that just passed second reading just a few days ago for a law prohibiting the trafficking of wildlife in Nigeria. It is a very good bill. That's the way to go. We have others, but the issue has been the implementation. You know, Nigeria has taken some steps, no doubt about it. We have the national parks all across the country, and even last year, there was a desire to increase the number of parks in the country. Unfortunately, because we don't have anyone close in Abuja, and that's why we within the city centers don't appreciate some of this. When you go to other countries and see that within the city, in Kenya, for example, their national park is just very close to the airport. You see lions, you see all these, animals living with the people. They don't hunt it. But for us, what do? Bushmeat.
Okay, so I'm coming to that bushmeat side.
Right. So, but I mean, now that we all have a role to play in this, and as this year's theme is also trying to remind us, I'm wondering, how can we start reorientating ourselves, survival instincts? Because you talked about bees, and I'm very sure that, maybe low education farmers would actually be doing things to prevent bees from being in their farms because it's like harmful. So yeah, how do we, survive while also having at the back of our minds that we have a role to protect the biodiversity?
Yes, I think that part of that is what we are doing on this program. Awareness creation. Awareness creation can never be enough. There's a trend in this country that is destroying our biodiversity and destroying our soils. What am I referring to? I'm talking about the heavy use of agrochemicals. When you go around now, you even see our gatesmen, the small farmers with knapsack sprayers on their back. What are they spraying? Herbicides, pesticides, right? Now, it is so uncontrolled that people just spray chemicals without understanding the impact of these chemicals on their health first and for biodiversity. So this farmer is trying to kill all the weeds, right? But is destroying the life within the soil, and just to also say, when we say biodiversity, it's not just the big plants. We're also looking at the microorganisms and the fungi that we don't see that are very beneficial to soil formation, and soil nutrients. So our farmers must be aware that when you destroy biodiversity, you are destroying yourself. So there should be the control on the use of agrochemicals. Who checks what comes into the country? Who checks what, the farmers use, the quantity, the mixture? There's no awareness, So when this is sprayed on the soil, there's runoff, right? It runs into the river. So who is affected? The entire biodiversity within the river is also affected. We're looking at fish, we're looking at all those microorganisms within the river channel. So this is a holistic issue that we need serious awareness, but very serious laws, proper and enforcement. Otherwise, it will not be good for all of us.
I just want to ask, you're a Christian. So you remember that part of the Bible that says God has given us
Dominion. Oh God, what a place to go.
Yes, dominion over everything, so you can eat anything that you want. So when you talked about bushmeat, so it just struck my mind, like, okay, if God has said, okay, we can do this, so why do we have to preserve
constrain our
hunting for bushmeat to that extent.
Over-exploitation.
Okay.
Over-exploitation. How many bushmeat do we still have in Nigeria? How many lions do we have in the wild in Nigeria? We have one in the children's park, right? That is very hungry. How many elephants do we have in the country? That's a key question. We have over-exploited, and so many of them are threatened right now. Some are going into extinction. So we wake up and just read about dinosaurs and all. That is what we are talking about. And we also have, the technology to produce and grow some of these things for our consumption. We are doing that successfully with fish right now. How many fishes do we still have in the river? Really, lots is fish farming. That is what is feeding us. So that is exactly what we're talking about. That we cannot eat everything we have. Move around. Before now, you see squirrels. Now you cannot find. Yeah. I'm from Benue. I know my people do a lot of hunting. We do bush rat and all of that. So, but we continue to sensitize the people, right. And also some of the ways that we go about hunting these animals further destroys the ecosystem. You can imagine somebody putting fire on entire hectares of land because you want to catch one grass cutter. You destroy the entire ecosystem.
Wow. Of course, there is never enough awareness and education on these questions just keep popping. But we're very glad to have you on the show this morning to share this very much knowledge with us about biodiversity and how it affects our environment.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Michael. We'll go on a break. When we come back, we'll still have more for you on Life from Abuja. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Life is politics. In Nigeria, almost every part of our lives is touched by the politics we play. Governance,